live. I'm Justin Lomnus, the Lunatic Libertarian, here with my guest, Lars For President 2024, and he's going to let us know a little bit about his campaign run for 2024 and let the people know who he is. Thank you very much for being on my show today, Lars. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So what inspired you to want to become President of the United States?
Well, honestly, I was looking at the 2020 election and listening to the Libertarian. I've been voting Libertarian for, I don't know, maybe the last 4 or 5 elections, I guess. But I wasn't really involved in party politics. I was just a voter. And I was looking and I saw that there was maybe 20 people running for the Libertarian Party. And then I was looking and there was like 20 people running for the Democratic Party. And now I was curious. I was like, how many people are running for president in 2020? So I did a quick Google search and there was 1,500 people ran for president in 2020. And I thought, wow, that seems like a lot of people. And then I said, is every election, is there 1,500 people running? And I'm like, out of 1,500 people, I guarantee you, one of those people was way better than the 2 people that we ended up voting for. You know what I mean? Like, at least one of those people was way better, for sure. And why didn't I get to hear about that person? Why didn't I get to hear about all these people's ideas, right? And like, these people, I'm sure, had great ideas, and maybe they didn't have all the ideas put together to be the president of the United States, but maybe they had some really good ideas that we should be listening to and that could influence our decision-making process in who we're voting for, kind of thing. So then I said, well, I started looking at it and it ramped up. Like in the year 2000, there was only like 10 or 15 people running. And then the next election, there was 50 people running. And the next election, there was 100 people running. And it's just ramping up, dramatically. And then I said, well, why is it that so many people running for president? And so I Googled, how do you run for president, right? And it just took me straight to the FEC website, and I started reading it, and it said, you just fill out this paperwork and you do this thing. And I said, oh, I'm doing that. I'm doing it right now. I'm doing it. And so I just did it. And so it started this like journey down this path of kind of deep dive into the actual Libertarian Party, learning. I called the LNC National and I said I'm going to run for president, and I need some. What do you guys offer for support? And they gave me a couple contact names, and I called those people, and they just basically led me down the path step by step. And so I for sure can do the job of president. I ran a company with 600 employees. I understand corporate governance. I understand, Robert's Rules of Order in some other organizations that I've been in. And so I have no doubt that I could run the country as president of the United States. And so why I'm running for president is I want to bring a different voice, another voice, right? That's the whole point, is that I just get sick of only having 2 people to vote for. Like, you have to choose this person or that person. I never agree with those people, ever. It's like, I feel so unrepresented every time I go to the voting booth, right? And it's like, I just want to offer a choice. Maybe I'm not everybody's choice, but I want to offer another choice, another option for people to like get behind and say, yeah, that's the ideas that I want to push forth, right? And so I kind of look at it like, we had 30 libertarians running in 2020, and a lot of them got to get up and say their piece, right? And it gave us a choice. It gave us choices. If somebody, even libertarians are like, well, why are you running for president? You don't have a chance in hell of becoming president. And I said, because I want to give people a choice. If no one runs, then you're just stuck with the 2 people that are there. It's like, we need more options, and I want to be one of those options. And even if I don't win, at least I can bring some ideas to the table that maybe the person that does get elected, or maybe I'm the person, and maybe I take some ideas from other people, right? And so I don't think it's a waste at all. A lot of people are like, well, you shouldn't do that. That's not the way to do it. And I've never been one to be put in a box. I don't like being put in a box. It's like, no, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And if you don't like it, tough.
Oh, that sounds a little bit like me, and maybe that's a little lunatic in the idea that you're going to pursue an opportunity that you feel is better, even if you don't have a chance of winning. You still give people the opportunity to hear your voice, hear your opinions, and to let them know that there are other ideas out there, other political entities that are willing to give the people a chance to get back to freedom. I have a question as far as Sean Hickman put me on to you, and I've seen your post on Facebook, and Spike Cohen is the one that really got me into being involved in the Libertarian Party. I've joined my state party in Wisconsin. We have a congressman that's running on the ballot against Mike Gallagher in the 8th Congressional District. It's really gaining momentum. And I think that the horrible politics that has been expressed over the past 22 years, because I'm 39 years old, and when I was 18, I didn't really care about politics. But ever since I've been involved, it's like it's really something that is kind of like an idea that's not wanting to be sold because there's a control factor there. I see that you want people to have choice, and you want to have the information out there that, hey, there is all kinds of stuff out here. You don't have to be placed into a box. Do you think that being president, would you like to keep that office there, or is that something that you'd like to start peeling back the layers of government to maybe one time we don't need a president anymore? Do you align more like anarcho-capitalist, or that, I guess that's what I'm trying to feel out here.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm for anarchy. I believe that we need some structure. I just think that we have way too much structure, and that we have way too much regulations and way too much government intrusion in our lives, just all around. It's just, I don't know if you saw in California, I live in California, and the Attorney General just leaked every person that owns a weapon in California, which I'm on that list. And so I was like, I just got doxxed by my own Attorney General. Right? Like, because they publish all the addresses of all the people, because you have to put your address down. So now everybody in California that owns a gun is basically on a list, and our government, just basically doxes us with that. So it's like, I don't believe that there should be any lists like that because of exactly this kind of a thing, right? And another example of stuff that's going on right now in California is they got a really big surplus of money because the stock market last year was doing so well, and there was a lot of companies going public and that sort of thing. So they got this huge infusion of cash through taxation, essentially. And now they've decided that they're going to give that money back, but they're not going to give it back to the taxpayers that paid the income tax. They're going to give it back in the form of a gas check, basically a rebate check or a stimulus check, right? And I'm like, they didn't learn their lesson from what's going on right now, and why we're on all this inflation from the stimulus checks that went out before, and now they're just going to stimulate the economy again while we're in the middle of inflation. It just boggles my mind. And then my buddy had pointed it out, and I was telling him, well, when they're going to send these checks out. And he's like, well, when are they going to send the checks out? I'm like, they're going to send them out right before a November election. And he's like, nah, they're going to send them out now. I read yesterday, they're sending the checks out October 1st. I'm like, come on, how ridiculously, it's just so, and most people won't even make that connection, that they're basically just buying votes, right? It's just like, it's so gross. And they're buying votes essentially with my money, right? Because I paid income tax, they're giving the income tax away. It's gross. And so, while I'm not for just utter, anarchy, I am for way less government because of this. It's just, there's so many of those kind of things every day that's just oppressing everyone. And I'd love to see a lot of that stuff just sloughed away, right? I for sure know I can run my life better than the government can run my life. And I think that's pretty much true for everybody.
And I think that's your slogan, right? You can run your life better than the government can.
Yeah. It's definitely I think that's a libertarian slogan, but I definitely agree with that.
I do as well. I mean, Do you think that being president of the United States, do you think that the executive orders that have been touted by Donald Trump, Obama, Bush, Biden, do you think those executive orders, is that one fell swoop of a pen where you would repeal all executive orders, or is that something you would systematically do?
Yeah, I've been saying the president isn't king. Congress makes the laws. I don't know why presidents are writing, executive orders, because I don't. Most of the time, they're not even constitutional. They get challenged in court and they get thrown out. But the damage is done, right? The damage is done while they wait the 6 months, unless the judge puts a stay on it, which they don't usually do, right? So you've got this law from on high that isn't even legitimate, but it has to make it through the process in order to be struck down. And so I'm not in favor of executive orders. Would I abolish every executive order that ever went through? I honestly would have to look at them, because maybe there's something in there that's, I can't say I would just clear cut, but I certainly would try to not do executive orders myself. And I certainly would get rid of a lot of the executive orders that are there. And I think Congress needs to step up and do their job, which is making laws, right? If they really want to have something like that done, then they should do it. And I'm a big fan of. I often say, if I'm president, I'm going to be the president of no, right? Is because if you get a libertarian president, the only thing they're really going to be able to do is veto stuff. It's not like they're going to be able to pass anything, right? And so then I got to thinking, well, if a bill can't pass with 2/3 of the vote of Congress, then maybe it's not worth passing. Because essentially, if you're passing stuff with 51%, you're always screwing 49% of the rest of the people in America. And I don't feel like that's something that's sustainable long term, right? If you keep shoving down half the people in America, regardless of what side you're on, people are going to get so resentful that it's going to pile up, and there's going to be some not so good things happen out of that.
Right. Have you thought about a running mate, a vice presidential running mate? I know that the Libertarian Party elects their own vice presidential candidate separate from the presidential candidate. If you had to choose, which vice presidential candidate would you choose to run with you?
Wow, I've thought about it a little bit. It's not something that I've put a huge amount of effort into, because of exactly what you said. I'm sure that there's obviously some great voices in our party that I would love to have pretty much anybody that's going to run against me as president be a vice president, because I know that we have some great voices and we need those voices to get our message across, right? I mean, the whole thing of President for Libertarian really is spreading the message of liberty, getting as many people to kind of sign up, to register to vote for us, to help all the down ballot people, to help with ballot access, right? I mean, it's the person who's running for president for Libertarian is really a spokesperson for the Libertarian Party, and is trying to carry the message to as many people as possible. I mean, that's the goal, and to help people who are running for governor, to help those people to go to their states and help them win, to help people that are in even more down ballot things to win their elections. And I think that the president race is really a supportive race to the rest of the Libertarian Party. It's not, because no matter who we put up there, whether I win or whether somebody else wins, we're unlikely to break 5%. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And so if that's the reality of it, then we have to look at what is the point of running this. And the point is to carry the message to and to help ballot access, and to get more people registered as libertarians. We need, if we're ever going to win a presidential race, we need 30 million people to re-register as Libertarian Party. And so I think that's the job that's ahead of us, and that we have to continuously work on, is to pull more people into the fold,
Yeah, and it's really hard to try and convince people that have been, I call it programmed into the duopoly, to say that there is only the left or the right, which technically is not the Democrat and Republican parties really anymore. You got Democratic Socialists, you got extremist parties coming out of the right wing. Do you think that the spectrum that the Libertarian Party runs on, or the philosophies that they run on, do you think that it's more approachable to be able to speak that message to some people if you kind of get the argument to be more like a Democrat or to a Republican, or is it just this is the Libertarian Party, this is just the way that it is, take it or leave it? Because I think that approaching Democrats from their political agendas still can be approached a libertarian way. Same thing with the right wing. It's when we get into all these isms and all these other things that it really kind of dies down the message, because people are dug in deep because they're obviously hurting and they think that one party is going to solve their problems. Do you think that libertarians can approach the entire spectrum on just their policies, or do they have to kind of bend to try and just get that conversation started?
Yeah. So, one of the things that's been part of the learning process in this run for president is that I always knew that there was a left and right. I never knew that there was an up and down. I never knew that there was authoritarian and and an anti-authoritarian, right? I never knew that. Libertarian is the anti-authoritarian, right? And so I think we kind of missed the boat in that we shouldn't be pitching right or left. We should be pitching anti-government, anti-authoritarian, right? Like everybody that I know has been oppressed by the government in some way, shape, or form, whether they're a Republican or a Democrat, and people resent that. And I think we need to tap into that. I mean, we need to tap into especially for me, local government can be a lot more intrusive in your life than even federal government, right? And so I think we need to tap into that. Is that we just want to be left alone. We don't want the government meddling in our day-to-day affairs, to the degree that they are. And so one of the things that I think that depending on how the economy goes, I think 2024 is going to be a big economic thing, and it's going to be the economy stupid again, right? It's the economy stupid. And I remember early on in my voting, I voted for I can't think of his name right now. The oil executive.
Ross Perot.
So I voted for Ross Perot, and the reason I voted for Ross Perot, I didn't listen to any of the rest of the stuff that he talked about. I was young and wasn't really paying that much attention, but he was firing on the economy, right? He had all these charts, and he was telling you how screwy Congress was, and that they were spending too much money, and we needed to rein them in, and so I think that we don't necessarily have to focus on all these issues and be everything to everyone. I think we can focus on the important issues that are things that people care about. So one of the things one of the big things that I hate taxes. I loathe taxes. I loathe the income tax. I loathe the IRS. I've been audited ungodly amounts of times, and they always get nothing, but they just make your life absolutely miserable while they've got their claws into you, right? And I also just every year I spend so much time and energy complying with tax law, and especially when I was running my businesses, I would take 2 weeks out of my life just to comply with tax law, right? And I was like, I could be so productive. 2 weeks is like a giant amount of time in your productivity, because you only have so many working years in your life, and they're stealing your time. They're stealing your time so they can steal your money, right? Which is it hurts my soul. So one of the things that I really, am pushing for is just to abolish as much taxation as possible. And I think it resonates with anybody, right? And for instance, you'll hear Democrats, they're talking about, there's these loopholes for the rich people, and there's the rich don't pay their fair share, and you'll hear different things that they're pushing, right? And I think that we can meet people that are with that agenda. So I'm a big fan of the fair tax. And the fair tax basically abolishes the IRS, right? It gets rid of the IRS and it does a consumption tax. And one of the things that I really like about it, which people don't talk about, is Congress gets a lot of power through legislation of the tax code, right? They basically pick winners and losers. They're like, oh, I owe this corporation something, so what we're going to do is we're going to put a tariff on their, on the people that are competitive against them, and we're going to change the laws so that they get a little special carved out because we want to pitch their thing or whatever. And I feel like one of the ways that we can reduce the power of Congress dramatically is to get rid of the income tax and get rid of the IRS so that they don't have that ability to like carve out special deals for people, right? And that's what you hear Democrats complaining about, is they don't like the loopholes, which is basically just special carve outs that Congress gives to people, right? And they want people to pay their fair share. They feel like other people are getting a better deal than they're getting. Whether that's true or not, that's how they feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to say, hey, we have a solution for that, and that is to just get rid of the IRS altogether. It's an option, right? So that's one thing. But to be honest with you, even though the fair tax has backing in Congress and it's been a bill before Congress, the chances of getting it passed is very, very slim. But I like it because at least it has a chance. At least it's something, and it is the only path forward that I see right now that has any chance in hell of abolishing the IRS. So I'm for it, right? But I'm also pushing a more mundane thing that I think everybody can get behind too, right? A more moderate position, which is a cutting of the payroll tax, right? Because everybody who works gets money taken out of their check, and everybody who works could use that money for something better. And I guarantee you they know how to spend that money for themselves and their family better than the government does, right? I mean, it's just absolutely clear. And I think that pitch appeals to everybody, regardless of you're a Republican or a Democrat or whatever. It's like, we want to cut your taxes. We want to give you more money in your pocket. And if you argue against that, I don't really know what to say to you. I'm sure there'll be somebody that wants to argue that, it's even in the Libertarian Party. I posted a thing about the fair tax this week, and I had libertarians come at me. One guy said, well, that's not far enough. You've got to abolish all income tax. And then I had one person said, you're way too radical. Even the fair tax is too radical. You're never going to appeal to people, so you need this little thing. And so I feel like I have a three-prong approach. The ideal is no taxes for anybody. I'm all on board. If you can figure out how to do it, awesome, right? The middle ground is the fair tax, where we abolish the IRS and we change how everything's doing. And then the moderate position is we cut the payroll tax so that everybody can have some more money in their pocket, and we offset that so that we don't balloon the budget deficit and crush all the other programs by cutting different agencies in the federal government that are just worthless and just sucking our money dry for no reason at all.
One thing I would like to do is just get rid of the Department of Defense control of their budget. That's one thing that I think there's hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars that just go to waste anyway. And being a military veteran, I can tell you firsthand that, shit just gets thrown away for no reason just because they want to maintain their budgets. There's no incentive to try and save and to reduce costs, because the whole thing about budgets is so that you can continue to keep receiving that money year after year after year. That's just like the end of the year dump. Oh, well, I have this much money sitting. Instead of saying, oh, well, we can roll this over to the next cycle, they're just like, oh no, we got to dump this quick so that we get our entire budget back. And that's kind of like, there is no incentive for change, because then you never get the same thing over again. It's the same thing with the government having money pumped in for special interests that kill competition. There's nothing there that makes incentive for change on the large scale. And the commoner like myself, I don't understand all these things through and through, and I'm never going to admit that I'm the academic on numbers or anything like that. I'm just a guy that can recognize these systems are not built for changing anything. It's just to pile onto itself. And you think that government can get reduced at all on a federal level? It's real hard to get candidates to say, well, I want to get rid of this or I want to get rid of that. It's more of, well, we're going to just fix this one small little thing that popped up this last cycle. We're going to fix this one small thing that popped, and they just keep running on that, and people keep buying into it. Is there any way to change the landscape of politics if you get elected to presidency?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that, because it's not just the military; it's every piece of government, from the federal government, the top of the federal government, down to your local city council. It's the same. They just burn through the money. They have no accountability. If we made all the people spending the money go to each individual and ask them for their money, the things would be a lot different, right? If they had to knock on your door and say, "Hey, I need $600 right now because we're gonna, pave this road or whatever it is," right? It would be a lot different if they had to come and face each person that they're taking the money from. But it's just this ambiguous blob that they're stealing the money from, so there's no accountability for it, right? And exactly what you said, they go in and they have to spend all the budget, because if they don't spend the budget, then the next year they're like, "Oh, they didn't need that budget, so we're going to cut their budget," right? And then they're like, "Oh crap, but this year we actually need it," right? And I don't know it was one time this year, the military asked for a set amount of money from Congress. I don't remember exactly what the number was, but it was, hundreds of billions of dollars. And Congress gave them more than they asked for. Like the military came in and said, "This is what we need," and Congress is like, "No, we got you, fam. We're going to give you more than you even want, because we've got extra money and we want to get rid of it," or whatever. And so, I mean, I'd like to see that excess money go to taking care of our veterans that are, it's like, I have a bunch of veteran friends that have to deal with the VA, have medical issues from when they served in the military, and they tell me the stories of their medical life, and it's just atrocious, right? And it's like, these are the people that served our country that we sent out in harm's way, and now we're not willing to take care of them, but we're willing to leave billions of dollars worth of crap in Afghanistan when we leave. It's like, come on. It's like this. I was pissed today because we're sending another 800 million, 80 million, 800 million, some ridiculous amount of millions over to Ukraine to back that up. And I'm like, there are so many, I'm not saying that you should take X money and you have to fix all of America's problems, but come on, we have so many problems here that need to be solved before we go off and are doing stuff across the world. And the whole, every celebrity in America wants to go over and have their picture taken with the president of Ukraine. It's like pandering. It's gross. It's gross. It's just I feel bad for what's going on there. The loss of life. Anytime there's war, it's horrible, right? But it's the positioning of our political elite and our people that are important in America or whatever. And they're just pandering and virtue signaling, and it's gross, right? It's like, okay, we need to help people, fine, but you don't need to go and puff up yourself at the expense of American taxpayer, essentially. It's just yeah. So I think one of the things, back to your question, one of the things I've been thinking of, and I haven't fleshed it out completely, but when you're running a company, sometimes you want to incentivize a department to do something. For instance, you have too much fraud going on, right? So you incentivize the department. You say, "Look, if you guys can cut fraud by 20%, you'll get this bonus. We're going to get." So I was thinking about a government spiff. If you save the government $1 million, right? We'll give you $10,000 or something like that as an incentive for cutting waste, so that you get people calling out waste. It's like, "Oh, my department did this," right? And it's and we don't need that money, right? It's if you could get the people incentivized to call out their own department and say, "You're just burning money to the ground for no reason, and it's unnecessary," like a whistleblower kind of a thing, but on a whistleblower on government waste, right? And maybe there's already a program like that, but something along those lines where we could get people incentivized to not spend their whole budget. How can we incentivize people to save the government money and run the government more like a company where they're trying to make a profit, or at least break even, so we don't have running these ridiculous $30 trillion budgets where we're burning our children, our great grandchildren down to the ground. I really hate MMT. I don't know. It's like
Modern monetary theater, in my opinion, and this is my show, so I'll say it can go fuck itself.
Yeah, I don't like it at all. And people try to argue that crap with me, and I'm just like, not in my house, not up in my business. It's like, I think it's fantasy, honestly, and I think we're seeing some of that come home to roost right now. Is that you can't just endlessly print money and that it will just fix it. I don't believe that crap. So I'm not a fan of MMT. I think that we need to have, and it's one of the reasons I'm a libertarian, fiscally responsible, right? I want to be fiscally responsible. If I'm president, I will be fiscally responsible. I will try my best to not spend your money unwisely, right? And it's like, you hear people arguing for more taxes on people. They're like, well, we need to tax those people. And I say, if you tax those people more, how is it going to benefit you? If I tax XYZ over there, is your life going to get any better? And the only reason they really want to tax those other people is because they feel like they're being treated unfairly. And so they want those people to be treated the same way that they are, right? And so it's like, no, we shouldn't be arguing to tax people more. We should be arguing that the government should spend our money more wisely and stop taking money from any of us as much as possible.
Well, and I think there's an incentive right now that people have the dependence on government. And that's why, well, the government's going to come in and we're going to solve all your problems. We're going to fix your schooling because we have the Federal Department of Education. Oh, we're going to fix housing. We're going to do this. But it's all from a point of war. The mindset of war. We have a war on poverty. We have a war on drugs. We have a war on this. And it's just all perpetual motion running into each other, and it never really solves anything. If anything, it makes the problems even worse because people derive their dependencies on government. Now, one of the things I talk about in the show is skill sets and being able to have self-security, because you could be a producer versus being a consumer. And when we talk about economics, those are the two classifications of human beings in the United States. You have the producers and then you have the consumers. I think that people have gotten to the idea that the wants that they have are now needs. Like, oh, well, I need a car to go here and there. Back in the day, people had their own 2 feet, or they had a bicycle, or they had some kind of way to get to their destination. Nowadays, it's like, well, I need this, I need that. It's changed the mindset so much, especially in younger generations, that I need my PlayStation 5, I need my Xbox, I need my 90-inch television that only costs $1,200. I need all these things. But then if you were to ask them simple basic knowledge questions, there is nothing there. And I think that also goes back to the entertainment versus education. Mm-hmm. Everybody's so focused on entertainment versus education. And I think that's, I'm running this podcast from an iPad because I can just click, scroll. And instead of looking up how to build a house or how to fix my finances, I'm looking up what Justin Bieber looks like after, he has his little droopy eye, And I think it's really confused the American public. And when propaganda is mixed into that, the information spread is so jumbled, you can't keep up with it. And I think that's one of the things that is another thing that's wrong with this country, is that you can't keep up on the information because it's constantly changing. And then people were just like, well, screw it. I'm not going to pay attention to it anymore. Do you think that when you pay attention to your surroundings and you have self-security versus government, that you end up with people that want to be libertarian and want to be liberty-minded?
Well, I don't know that being productive is necessarily liberty-minded, but I do agree with what you're saying. I feel like a lot of it comes from, you'll see a kid in a really poor third world nation, right? And they're really skinny. They're not eating very good, and they're kicking some tin can down the street or a ball or something like that, right? And they have the biggest shit-eating grin on their face. They are like the happiest people and you're like, how can this person be so happy and have so little, right? And I think part of it is that they're not bombarded with media that shows you all the things that other people have, right? They are content with the things that they have, and instead of feeling like they're not getting their fair share, they're not getting their comeuppance, right? And so in some ways, I think the hyper media that we live in today is causing some of this feeling that, like, you'll see a social media person, right? They're working hard, but they become they make $20 million in a year sitting in front of a camera, and a lot of people see that and they say, well, that's not really hard work, and so therefore I don't feel like I should have to do anything because I just want to be that, right? I just want to be a rock star. I just want to be a pro basketball player. I want to be these things, and I don't want to actually, have to put in the effort. And I think, like, I don't know if I should tell a little bit about my early childhood. I grew up, my parents were hippies, and they had a Volkswagen bus, and we drove around in the Volkswagen bus for the first couple of years of my life. And then we settled in Big Sur, California, which is like ultra hippie, wild coast. And we had goats, and my mom was a pot farmer, and we were super poor. They did gardening on the side for work, and I literally lived in a goat barn. Okay, and I didn't have a TV until I was probably 12 or 13 years old. And so I just played in the woods and screwed off and did my thing. But I bring that up because it's my kids have grown up totally differently. My kids have had the PlayStation 5 and everything delivered to them, and one of the things that I've heard over and over from people that have been really successful, that came up from maybe nothing or whatever, is that we've de-risked children's lives, right? There's no risk anymore. I was thinking about it where when I was in my early 20s, and I had a car payment to make, and I couldn't make the car payment, and I was freaking out. And I asked my dad if he could give me $300, and he said, "No, I can't give you $300, but I can buy you." He was a wholesale florist at the time. He said, "I can buy you some flowers, and you can go stand down on the street corner and sell flowers to get your $300, and then you can pay me back for the flowers that I bought for you, right?" And so, it's like, now it's like kids are like, "I need $300," and the parents just whip out the $300, and the kids are like, "Okay," and then it becomes expected, right? And so and the problem with that is that if you don't have struggle,
Incentive.
if you don't have struggle in your life, then you can't feel victorious when you overcome that struggle. You can't feel like, I accomplished something. I did something, with these hands, with this mind, I accomplished something, and I feel proud of myself, right? And so if you take that out of that, it's like there's all kinds of bad stuff comes with that, because when people aren't feeling good about themselves, then you end up with all these people on antidepressants, and you end up with a whole nother slew of problems that's going through America today, right? And so got off on a tangent there.
That's fine. I've seen people that have dependencies, and I've seen people that are incentivized by these programs, and I've seen people that want to get off the programs. I was on public assistance while I was in college. That's because I been charged with a felony, convicted of a felony. Nobody wanted to touch me as far as my trade, because then you're a risk factor, because, well, is he going to go back to jail? Am I going to invest time in this individual? And then they're not going to be, the return on investment isn't, the risk versus reward is not there. Now, when my children come up to me, I always tell them, the first thing I say is, well, try and figure it out for yourself, and then come for my help. And then if you can't come and figure it out, I'm not going to do it for you. I can give you some guiding steps, but that's about it, because you're going to have to gain the wisdom through failure. And if you can't do that, then there is no incentive for success. And I think that's what you're talking about here.
Yeah.
And I think when you give people checks for not going to work because of a virus. And I think when you hand things out as far as the welfare state is considered in a lot of people's arguments, there are people that are destitute. I'm not going to deny that. But there are a lot of abled people that just don't do anything because they have the ability to receive their their bare necessities, their food, water, shelter, clothing on somebody else's dime. I think that from my personal experience, not having a lot of things and then going to the streets, not finding a lot of success there, and then having a couple of educators, put me under their wing, give me the knowledge that I didn't receive, and then ran with that, I think it opened my eyes to a lot of different avenues that I could do with my life. And there are multiple options for people. Like when I became a diesel mechanic, I just didn't focus on the engine. I just didn't focus on the transmission. I tried to learn every single piece of that system and how it would function, from the electrical to the HVAC to everything. And then you can expand out. Now I know that applies to not only that vehicle, but it applies to my house. It applies to high voltage systems, HVAC systems, whether it's in your home or in a car or on a train or on a trailer. It does not matter. The basic knowledge is there. Then you go out and find the specifics. Do you think that incorporates a lot of the reasons that we have a lot of violence in this country currently?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not, again, it goes back to not feeling good about yourself, right? If you're not feeling like you're a productive part of society and that you're, you got to have that self-confidence, that self-esteem, in order to feel. If you don't have self-esteem and self-confidence and feel good about yourself, then how can you treat other people good, right? I mean, it's kind of like one of those things where. And so I'm for a helping hand up, but I'm not necessarily for an endless helping hand out, right? It's like my parents, when we were running around in that VW bus, they had some kind of food stamps or things like that. So I mean, they definitely you relied on the government to kind of like lift them up for a while, but they always had jobs while they were doing that. It wasn't like they were sitting around doing nothing. They were working, but it wasn't paying enough to cover whatever it is that we needed to do, right? So I have I don't know, a soft spot for that, for helping people out, but I also there's like a compassionate enabling where you basically cross this position where now you're harming people by helping them, right? There's a certain point where you're helping people, and then it's like you're now actually harming them because you're enabling them to continue with doing the things that they want to do. So I like the idea of limits, of limiting services, to basically offer people opportunities to like lift themselves up, right? And I think a lot more trade schools. We have shortages in everything right now, right? And part of that is because and people aren't really talking about this, but baby boomers, are retiring at a much faster rate than new people are coming into the workforce, right? And then we had pandemic, and people stopped working for 6 months, and a lot of them said, "You know what? I'm 2 years out from retiring. I just don't care anymore. I'm done." We lost 3 million people from the workforce like that, exactly like that. And there's not 3 million new extra kids coming on this year to like take up the slack, right? And so that's why we're having shortages everywhere of workers, because there's literally like if you look at the chart for total employment, Biden will say, "Oh, we have the strongest employment ever in history. I created so many jobs. It's unbelievable, you guys. I'm the greatest president ever to come." And then you look at the chart, and the employment the number of people employed was going up steadily, and then we had this huge cliff where everybody was fired and turned off, which should have never happened. It was totally ridiculous. And then it starts coming back. But you know what? We're still not at that same peak that we were before pandemic. We have less people working today than we did before pandemic, total employment. And it's like, and then you hear this malarkey, "Oh, I've made so many new jobs. I'm the greatest job creator in the history." It's like BS, dude. There's less jobs today than there was before. it's pretty simple. It's like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at the chart and go, "You're pushing propaganda. Come on, buddy, give me a break."
Yeah,
As
I
you,
mean, and there's really not a lot of incentive for people to work either, because when you look at pay and the amount of pay that goes into what I get paid, I think that the labor rate right now to work on a heavy truck, I think the average across the country is around 100 to $180 an hour, depending on what area you're in. Now, I think that number should probably be about 4 times as expensive, because what it costs me just to do my job, because it's not like a company's buying my personal tools. That's another way that they get the worker, is that it's indentured servitude, because you're constantly making payments on your tools and everything else. So you're constantly in debt to try and pay off to do your job, and then the technology changes, and then and then you got to buy new stuff and new stuff and new stuff. I own probably about close to 250 to $280,000 worth of tools, but I don't own my own house. I don't have the credit factor to own my own house, because through my early 20s, I bought everything with cash. I never used credit cards or anything like that, or had loans. So this was something that maybe I should have learned, from, my public education. I don't know, maybe from my parents. Well, both my parents worked and they were never home. My father worked 12 hours a day, still works 12 hours a day as a 62-year-old man. My mother passed away when she was 41. And the thing is that hard work was always instilled. You got to get up and you got to work hard. You got to work hard. Knowledge is power was one of the biggest things that they were pushing in public schools. And I think a lot of the generation, I was born in '83. I think a lot of the generation still believes that knowledge is power and hard work will get you to success. But I think because they had it hard, they wanted to make their children's lives easy. And that goes back to that old saying, hard times make for great men make for easy times make for, or weak men, and then weak men equal hard times. I always screw that one up, but you know what I'm talking about. And with your businesses, was there always a success, or did you have some failures and then you learn new things and then you built off of that?
yeah, I mean, I got really fortunate in my business, that I fell into something that I was really competent at and that I loved, right? And so it it just fit and it just worked. And so I feel fortunate that worked out for me, right? But it's in I worked really hard. There was probably almost 10 years there where I worked 80 hours a week straight. I mean, because I was my own boss and I was kind of running the show before I even got my big company. I was up at 2, 3 in the morning, working with my servers that were broken or whatever, and it was on me. I didn't have people helping me really, and so and it was one of these things where the more I worked, the more I could earn, and so I was afraid it was going to run out. So I just worked as much as I could without my eyes falling out, kind of a thing, And my friends were all at the beach surfing or hanging out and, hanging out at the bar with the girls or whatever. And I had my nose to the grindstone and I was working really hard. So I did work hard for what I got, but I also feel very fortunate that I was in the right place at the right time in a lot of different situations to get, the successes I have. Because, growing up, like I said, poor, it's kind of interesting. We lived in Big Sur, like I said, but there's an area near Big Sur called Carmel by the Sea and Pebble Beach, which is basically an enclave of really wealthy people from all around the world live there and have houses there and whatnot. And so my parents were often the gardeners at those really wealthy people's houses, right? Because that's who has big gardens and stuff, right? And so I was kind of taught this sort of bigoted viewpoint that if only the rich people would, do something, then the rest of us would all be able to have a better life or whatever, And then I got to a position of success, and people were like, "Oh, the rich people are sitting around trying to put us down," and I was thinking to myself, I've never been in any business situation where we sat around and talked about putting other people down. We were too busy trying to figure out how we were going to make more money, right? Like nobody got time to. And so I kind of like realized that there was like a little bit of bigotry in that sense, put into me of the rich people bad, and they oppress me. And while that's true to a certain degree of like buying favors or things like that in the high levels of Congress or whatever, I blame Congress for that because they're the ones that make the laws. And if they wanted to take money out of politics, they certainly could. But they really like how it's working for them right now. So I don't think it's ever changing.
Well, I think Congress needs an incentive that they don't get a paycheck. It should be voluntary. You're elected. It should be voluntary. You still have to work a 9 to 5 job. And some people have the argument, well, you can't. And it's like, no. They don't work that hard anyway. It's not like they're working 365 days out of the year. We're talking they're maybe working 60, 90 days out of the entire year doing real work. But usually that's their interns and stuff like that's actually doing the real work, and then they get the credit. We're coming up you got about 9 minutes. I know you got stuff to do. It sounds to me like you have the real upbringing of bottoms up and working for success, and then you share that success with your employees and stuff like that by giving them a job in which they can make a wage and stuff like that. Let's hear your biggest pitch about, because we have heard Biden, well, Canton and this stuff, and then he went to become a lawyer, and then he was real shitty in school, and then he went right into politics because that's your incentive, because you can constantly, you can increase your own pay wage and stuff like that. And they make $170,000 a year. I don't even make $100,000 a year. So it sounds like you have a real on the ground idea of what it is to be successful in the United States. Let the people know where they can find you. I got donate.lars24.com. That's your website to hit you up for donate so that they can donate to you for your campaign. If you have any dates scheduled for appearances, I know we got a couple years before the presidential election. Let the people know who Lars is and why you should be president of the United States.
Yep. All right. Yeah. So, my website there, basically my platform is the Libertarian Party platform. And like I said, I'm really focused on taxation. I also am a big fan of ranked choice voting, of kind of changing up our voting system. I hate the oppression that the two-party system puts on third parties and independent voters. I'd love to see people be able to run for whatever office they want to run so that we can bring more voices, to the system, whether it be the local system or the all the way up to the federal level. So ranked choice voting, open primaries, things like that, ballot access kind of stuff. I'm a big fan of seeing some of that stuff change. I also like the idea of term limits. I don't like the fact that we have people in Congress that have been in there for 40 years and it's the lifetime appointment kind of a thing. I took a trip to Philadelphia one year when I was going to go race on the beach in New Jersey, and I stopped off at Liberty Hall and saw the Liberty Bell, and I took Independence Hall, and I took a tour of that. And they have the room where the first Congress sat, right? And it's got, 20 something chairs, whatever it is in there, right? And out of the whole conversation that people had, the thing that struck me the most, the lady said, and it goes back to the point of what you were talking about before, the lady said, these were people that were farmers or bread bakers or ran a blacksmith or whatever it was that they did in their time. And they would come here for a couple months out of the year or whatever they needed to make a vote. And then they'd go back to their regular jobs, that this was a voluntary position. This was not supposed to be a position that you were like coming here and doing for the rest of your life, right? And it's like, I'm in some groups of people where it's, it's voluntary, right? I think voluntary is a key piece here, right? Is because you come in, you serve, and you get the hell out of there and let somebody else come in and serve. And it's like a spirit of rotation, right? It's like we need more ideas. If you're in there for 40 years, you probably got all your ideas out of you in the first 3 years, right? And the big things that you wanted to accomplish, and then you're just like taking up space. And it's like I want to see change. I want to see new, fresh ideas, right? It's like people that come in, and this is one of the things I saw in business, and even in my business, is like technology moves extremely fast. right? And as you said, things change, and then you have to retool and you have to relearn all the stuff 2 years later on something that you already knew. And then the tech companies are exactly the same. And what I realized quickly was, as I started turning 40 years old, and I saw the 20-year-old kids coming in, and they were looking at things totally different than I was looking at them, right? They had totally different perspectives and ideas than I had. And my brain wasn't able to even think that way because I had different experiences, and so my brain was kind of blocked off from this. So we need the young people to come in and give us the fresh ideas on how to make the country better and how to change the country for the good, right? So I really believe in turnover. And like I said earlier, I'm running for president to give choice, right? I'm running for president to spread the message of liberty, to tell people that they can run their lives better than the government can run their lives, right? And if I get a few people to change their mindset and to start thinking that way, I feel like I'm a success. Because it's, we all know that arguing on the internet, you're rarely going to ever change anybody's mind, right? And so if we can just turn a few people, and I like that, like what Spike's doing with his "You Are the Power," and what other people are doing, helping spread the message of liberty. I sign up for that 110%. Even everybody who's going to be running against me in the presidency, I feel like these are all my brothers and sisters because we're trying to do something here. We're trying to change what's been going on, right? And what's going on is broken. I mean, it's just been broken. I haven't been represented by an elected official since I've been voting, basically. Nobody has the same viewpoints as me. And when I finally found the Libertarian Party, I was like, oh my goodness, there's people that think like me. Holy crap. Oh, wow. You really? Oh, I love it. And so, I got to go to Reno for the national convention, and I met amazing people that are out there trying to do this exact same thing. And they have passion and they have work ethic. People who are going out and getting signatures for ballot access and are putting their time and effort, and they're doing that voluntary action kind of thing that we were talking about. I mean, that's what it's all about to me, and if we can keep pushing that message, we're success. If we can keep doing that, we're success. And if we can, as a party, we're here to win elections, right? We're here to get people in office to help push that message more. And so anything that I can do to help people, win local elections, I give a lot of donations to little guys all over the country because I feel like I have the wherewithal to do that, and I know it means a lot to people, and just even not even necessarily the money, but I believe in you enough to give you some of my money for you to go out and spread the message of liberty, right? And I think that's super important. So that's it. And I have Twitter and Instagram, which I don't use that much. Mostly my stuff is all on Facebook. You can find me Lars For President, and I'm posting nonstop, which you may have seen.
No, that's fine. I really appreciate you coming on the show so early in the campaign season because, hey, we got 2 years to try and make this thing blow up and to get you into the presidency. I'm for promoting anybody that's running under the Libertarian banner for office. I'm not here to be detrimental to anybody. This is all about getting people into office to get the government out of your way so that you can run your life, because there's only you, and you're the best one that knows how to run your own life. I'm sorry, but nobody else is. And I don't care who you argue with. Everybody's going to say, keep your nose out of my business. I know what the hell I'm doing with my own life. And that is a choice that everybody in this country has, because you have the right to life, liberty, and that pursuit of happiness. Lars, I want to make sure I get the last name right. Mapstead?
Mapstead, yeah.
Thank you very much for being on the Lunatic Libertarian. I know you got to go, and we are out here. You are the power.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, sir. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
All right. You too.
Everybody, Lunatic Libertarian, Lars for President 2024. Get out there. Check out his message. Go out there and vote. Be free, people. Be free.